The large assembly hall was filled with the soft buzz of hundreds of alien cadets. They came from all corners of the Galactic Confederation, some with tentacles, others with scales, a few who floated rather than walked. Despite their differences, they all wore the same silver-blue uniforms of the Confederation Academy, and they all waited for the same thing. Fleet Commander Zakathar moved slowly toward the speaking platform. His old exoskeleton creaked with each step. Battle scars marked the hard surface of his shell, each one a story, each one a memory. Four eyes on stalk swiveled to scan the crowd as he reached the center of the stage. The room fell silent. Cathar was a legend among the Confederation forces, one of the few who had faced humans in battle and lived, one of the even fewer who later fought beside them as allies. Today, he began, his voice translator turning his natural clicks and hisses into words the gathered cadets could understand, marks 50 years since our first contact with the species known as humans. A ripple of excitement moved through the crowd. Humans were still rare in this sector of the galaxy. Most cadets had only seen them in videos or simulations. I have been asked to share my experiences, Zakathar continued, to tell you what it means to face these beings in combat, to explain what makes them. He paused, searching for the right word. Different. He touched a control panel on his arm. A large hologram appeared above the stage. It showed the emblem of the Terran Defense Force, a blue earth with stars around it and crossed swords behind. I commanded the battlecruiser Voice of Justice during the Orion conflict, Zakathar said. My ship was part of a fleet sent to stop Draxian expansion. We did not expect to encounter humans there. The hologram changed to show a starfield. Small, lights represented ships. One glowed bright red. This, said Zakathar, pointing at the red light, was a human vessel called Relentless. Its captain was a human named Ethan Miller. A young cadet in the front row raised a blue tentacle. Zakathar nodded to indicate the cadet could speak. Commander? The cadet asked, voice high and bubbling. Is it true humans fight without hive, coordination, that they operate as individuals? A clicking sound came from Zakathar that the translator did not convert. The cadets recognized it as laughter, but not happy laughter. Yes, Zakathar said, after the clicking stopped. Not only do they fight as individuals, but they thrive on chaos in ways that defy all military logic. The hologram changed again. Now it showed a close-up of a human ship. It was small and looked rough compared to the sleeker Confederation designs. Its hull was marked with blast damage and hasty repairs. Captain Miller refused to join our formation, Zakathar said. He claimed his ship was better suited for hit-and-run tactics. I ordered him to comply with Confederation battle protocols. The old commander's antennae twitched at the memory. He smiled at me through the communication screen and said he would play it by ear. Another human expression I had to learn. It means to improvise, to make decisions in the moment without a plan. Several cadets made sounds of shock or disbelief. To most Confederation species, battle without a plan was unthinkable. The Draxian fleet outnumbered us 3-1. Zakathar continued. Our battle computers calculated a 40% chance of victory if we maintained perfect formation and followed standard attack patterns. The hologram showed two groups of lights facing each other. The smaller group, the Confederation ships, were arranged in a perfect crescent, except for one light that blinked near the edge of the display. Captain Miller took his ship away from our formation, Zakathar said. I thought he was retreating. I was wrong. The blinking light in the hologram moved in a wide arc around the edge of the battle zone. He was moving to attack the Draxian command ship from behind, Zakathar explained. A tactic our battle computers had rejected as having only a 7% chance of success. The cadets watched as the simulation played out. The human ship disappeared from sensors briefly, then reappeared directly behind the largest enemy vessel. The Draxians never detected him, Zakathar said. Captain Miller had shut down all major systems on his ship, letting it drift the final approach using only minimal maneuvering thrusters. His crew worked in cold, dark conditions for 3 hours to avoid detection. In the hologram, the small human ship suddenly flared bright as it opened fire on the Draxian command vessel. The Relentless fired all weapons at close range, targeting their engines and command center, Zikthar said. The Draxian shields were not at full power in that section. They never expected an attack from behind. The hologram showed the Draxian fleet falling into disarray as their command ship lost power. With their command structure damaged, the Draxian fleet lost coordination, Zekathar said. We pressed our attack and won the day. All because one human, Captain, ignored orders and did what our computers said would fail. The old commander's exoskeleton rattled slightly in what the cadets recognized as agitation. After the battle, I demanded to know why Captain Miller had disobeyed direct orders, Zekathar said. He looked at me with those strange human eyes and said, Sometimes you have to trust your gut, Commander. Zekathar touched his midsection reflexively. Another human saying, It means to trust instinct over data, to follow feelings rather than facts. A cadet with crystalline features raised, a glowing appendage. But Commander, how can one build military doctrine on feelings? How can a species fight effectively without central coordination? That, said Zekathar, is exactly what makes humans so dangerous in combat. They do not think alike. Each one is a separate problem to solve. The hologram changed to show Captain Ethan Miller. He was of average build for a human with short brown hair and a face that looked tired but determined. He wore a simple dark blue uniform with small rank markers on the collar. In the battles that followed, Zekathar continued, I learned that Captain Miller was not unusual for his species. Each human commander fought differently. Each had their own style, their own patterns. The old alien commander looked out at the sea of young cadets. The Confederation military trains you all to think alike, to follow protocols, to act as one perfect machine, he said. Humans train their warriors to think for themselves, to adapt, to improvise. When you destroy one part of our military machine, the rest works less efficiently. When you destroy part of a human force, the survivors simply change their tactics and keep fighting. Zikathar's voice grew quieter, and the cadets leaned forward to hear. The greatest mistake the Draxians made, the same mistake I almost made, was thinking that human unpredictability was a weakness, he said. We did not understand that chaos was their ally. We did not see that their seeming disorder was in fact their greatest strength. The hologram shut off, leaving only Zekathar illuminated on the stage. That was only my first encounter with human warfare, the old commander said. I have many more stories to tell you. Stories that might help you understand these strange beings who have become our most important allies. The assembly hall was completely silent now. Every cadet sat transfixed, eager to hear more about the mysterious humans who fought with their feelings instead of plans, who turned disorder into victory, and who had changed the face of galactic warfare forever. Fleet Commander Zekathar moved his weight from one set of limbs to another. The cadets watched him with great interest. None of them had ever seen combat against humans. None of them had experienced what the old commander had lived through. 15. Earth years after humans joined galactic society, Zekathar continued. The Draxians declared war on the Confederation. By then, humans had started building their own ships to our standards. He activated the hologram display again. This time, it showed a space station orbiting a small moon. Around the station floated dozens of large Draxian warships. This was Proxima Station, Zekathar said. A major supply depot near human space. The Draxians seized it in the first week of the war. Command ordered me to join a task force to retake it. The hologram zoomed out to show a small fleet of Confederation ships approaching the station. Among our forces was one human destroyer, the Dauntless, Zekathar said. It was captained by a human female named Lisa Grant. The image focused on a sleek ship with the words TDF Dauntless painted on its hull. My cruiser, the Voice of Justice, was assigned to escort her vessel, Zekathar explained. I believed I would need to protect these newcomers to space warfare. The old commander's antennae twitched with what the cadets recognized as embarrassment. I was wrong, he said simply. In the hologram, the Confederation fleet approached the station in careful formation. Red dots appeared showing Draxian patrol ships moving to intercept them. I transmitted the standard attack plan to all ships, Zikathar said. Captain Grant acknowledged receipt of my orders. Then her ship accelerated, breaking formation. The hologram showed the Dauntless suddenly shooting ahead of the other ships, heading directly toward the enemy blockade. I ordered her to return to formation immediately, Zikathar said. She responded with a human phrase I had never heard before. Sometimes you have to roll the dice, Commander. A cadet with 4 arms raised 1. What does that mean, Commander? It is a reference to a human game of chance, Zekathar explained. It means to take a risk, to gamble when the stakes are high. The hologram showed the Dauntless heading straight for a nearby asteroid field. Captain Grant's ship was faster than the Draxian cruisers, Zekathar continued. But instead of using that speed to escape, she flew directly into the asteroid field. The Draxians followed. The cadets watched as the human ship nimbly navigated between the floating rocks. Several Draxian ships followed, their larger size making the journey more difficult. As the Dauntless flew through the asteroid field, Zekathar said, it released what appeared to be mining charges. The Draxians thought nothing of it. Mining charges are not weapons. The hologram showed small objects floating among the asteroids as the human ship continued its flight. What the Draxians did not know, Zekathar said, was that the humans had modified these mining charges. They were now gravity distortion weapons. In the hologram, the Dauntless suddenly changed course, flying through a narrow gap between 2 large asteroids. Captain Grant's science officer, a human named Frank Rivera, had calculated a safe path through the field, Zekathar explained. Once their ship was clear, Captain Grant sent a signal. The hologram showed the mining charges suddenly lighting up. The asteroids began to move, pulled by unseen forces. The modified charges created gravity wells, Zekathar said. They pulled the asteroids together, creating a cascade effect. The cadets watched in amazement as the asteroids collided with each other and with the Draxian ships. One by one, the enemy vessels were crushed or disabled. 1/3 of the Draxian blockade was destroyed in that single action, Zekathar said. The rest were thrown into confusion. Our fleet attacked, and the station was retaken. The hologram showed the Confederation ships docking at the station. The Dauntless, now showing signs of damage from its flight through the asteroid field, was among them. After the battle, Zekathar continued, I went to the Dauntless to speak with Captain Grant. I found her in their medical bay. She had been injured when her ship was grazed by an asteroid. The image changed to show a human female with short gray hair and a stern face. A bandage covered one side of her head. I asked her why she had taken such a risk, Zekathar said. The asteroid field was dangerous. The mining charges were untested as weapons. By all logical standards, her plan should have failed. The old commander's 4 eyes blinked slowly in sequence. She looked at me with those strange human eyes and said, the Draxians had run the same calculations we had. They knew they outnumbered us. They knew their position was strong. They expected us to act logically, to retreat or to follow standard attack patterns. So I did what they didn't expect. A murmur ran through the assembly hall. The cadets shifted in their seats. This is the second lesson I learned about human warfare, Zekathar said. They understand how we think. They know we rely on calculations and protocols, and they use that knowledge against us. The hologram changed to show Captain Grant standing on the bridge of her ship. Her uniform was crisp, her posture straight despite her injury. Humans study their enemies, Zekathar continued. They learn our patterns, our tendencies, our rules. Then they deliberately break their own rules to confuse us. A cadet near the back stood up. This one had a body that glowed with inner light, a member of a plasma-based species. But, Commander, the cadet asked, how can an effective military force function without rules, without protocols? That, said Zekathar, is exactly what the Draxians wondered. It is what I wondered. We did not understand that humans have a different kind of discipline. They do not follow rules blindly. They understand why the rules exist, and they know when breaking them serves a greater purpose. The hologram showed Captain Grant meeting with her crew. They were gathered around a table looking at star charts. In the battles that followed, Zekathar said, I learned to work with Captain Grant and other human commanders. I learned that they valued input from all crew members regardless of rank. Their ships were not just weapons. They were communities. Zikathar's voice grew softer and the cadets leaned forward to hear. The humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When faced with overwhelming odds, they do not give up. They innovate, they find new ways to fight. The hologram showed the Dauntless in a later battle, now repaired and fighting alongside Confederation ships against a Draxian fleet. Captain Grant's actions at Proxima Station changed how we fought. The war, Zikathar said. We began to incorporate human unpredictability into our tactics. We learned that sometimes the logical action is not the best action. The hologram faded, leaving only Zikathar illuminated on the stage. But there was still much more for me to learn about humans, the old commander said. Their true strength was not in their ships or their tactics. It was in something far more puzzling to understand. The assembly hall was silent. Every cadet waited for Zikathar to continue his story, eager to learn more about the strange beings who fought with such unconventional methods. Zikathar paused to take a drink from a container designed for his species. The liquid inside glowed a soft blue. The assembly hall remained silent. No cadet wanted to miss a word of the old commander's stories. 6 months into the war with the Draxians, Zikathar continued, the enemy launched a ground assault on the human colony of New Anchorage. The hologram display changed to show a planet with 2 small moons. The view zoomed in to reveal a settlement built on the edge of a large canyon. New Anchorage was a young colony, Zikathar explained. Only 5,000 humans lived there, but the planet was rich in rare minerals needed for starship engines. The Draxians wanted it. The hologram showed ships descending from orbit. Red lights indicated Draxian landing craft. Blue lights showed the much smaller defensive forces of the colony. The human military sent what help they could, Zikathar said. One company of soldiers led by Major Susan Harris. My own government sent a mixed unit of Confederation troops. I was ordered to coordinate with Major Harris. The image focused on a sturdy-looking human female in battle armor. She had short blonde hair and a face marked with small scars. She stood at a table studying a map of the colony's defenses. When I arrived at New Anchorage, Zikathar said, I was concerned by what I found. The Draxian landing force outnumbered us 4-1. They had heavier weapons. They had air support. By all tactical simulations, the colony was doomed. A cadet, with skin that rippled like water, raised an appendage. Commander, why didn't you evacuate the colonists? Surely saving lives was more important than one settlement. A logical question, Zikathar replied. I suggested evacuation to Major Harris. She refused. The old commander's exoskeleton clicked as he shifted position. She told me, if we evacuate, the Draxians win. They take the mines, they get stronger. More colonies fall. We make our stand here. The hologram changed to show defensive lines being built around the colony. Humans and various alien species worked side by side, digging trenches and setting up weapon emplacements. I told Major Harris that our position was indefensible, Zikathar continued. The Draxians would overrun us in hours. She looked at me and said, then we'll just have to defend it anyway. The assembly hall filled with low sounds of disbelief. Did not understand her reasoning, Zikathar said. It seemed illogical, suicidal even. But I had my orders to coordinate with her forces, so I had no choice but to comply. The hologram now showed the Draxian forces assembling on a plain near the colony. Their numbers were vast compared to the defenders. The night before the attack, Zikathar said, I expected Major Harris to be in the command center, reviewing plans or getting rest. Instead, I found her walking among her troops. The image showed the human officer moving from one group of soldiers to another. She spoke with each of them, sometimes placing a hand on a shoulder or sharing a small joke. She knew every human, soldier by name, Zikathar said. Not just their rank and function, but their hometowns, their families, their personal stories. She spoke with the Confederation troops too, learning about their lives. A cadet with feathered wings spoke up. Was this some kind of human inspection ritual, Commander? No, Zakthar replied. It was something humans call building morale. Major Harris was creating personal connections with each soldier, making them feel seen and valued. The old commanders. 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of remembered wonder. In my species, he continued, we send drones to fight, expendable units without names. Even our living soldiers are expected to sacrifice themselves without question if ordered. But humans fight harder for someone they know, someone they trust. The hologram changed to show the battle beginning. Draxian forces advanced across the plain toward the colony. The attack came at dawn, Sekathar said. The Draxians hit us with everything they had. Their numbers were even greater than our intelligence had suggested. The image showed explosions along the defensive line. Soldiers, both human and alien, fought desperately against the advancing enemy. 3 hours into the battle, Zekthar continued. Our eastern flank began to collapse. A Draxian heavy weapons unit had broken through. If they established a position, they would cut our forces in half. The hologram focused on Major Harris in the command center, receiving this news from a scout. I expected her to order a retreat, Zekthar said, to save what forces she could. Instead, she put on her helmet and picked up a plasma rifle. The image showed Major Harris running toward the threatened section of the line, gathering a small group of soldiers as she went. She led the counterattack herself, Zakthar said. Not from the rear, not over communications. She was in front, firing her weapon, calling out encouragement to her soldiers. The cadets watched as the hologram showed the small group of defenders, charging toward the much larger Draxian force. The Draxians were not prepared for such an aggressive response, Zakathar explained. They had broken through our lines, but they had taken heavy losses doing so. They expected us to fall back, not to attack. The hologram showed Major Harris firing her rifle with one hand, directing her troops with the other. Then a bright flash of light engulfed her position. A Draxian plasma cannon hit near the Major, Zakathar said quietly. The blast took her left arm off at the shoulder. The cadets made sounds of shock and dismay. I saw it happen, Zakathar continued. I was coordinating our reserves. I expected her to fall, to be carried from the field. Instead, the hologram showed Major Harris on one knee, her left side burned and bloody. A medic ran to her with a field kit. She allowed the medic 30 seconds to seal the wound, Zikthar said. Then she stood up, took a sidearm with her remaining hand, and continued to lead the attack. The image showed the injured human officer pushing forward, her soldiers following, her with renewed determination. The Draxians broke, Zikthar said simply. They had never seen anything like it. Their commanders had told them humans were soft, physically weak compared to other species. Yet here was this small female, gravely injured, still fighting. The hologram showed the Draxian forces retreating in disorder back to their landing ships. We held new anchorage, Zekathar said. The colony survived, the mines remained in human hands. All because one human officer refused to accept defeat. The old commander's voice grew softer. Later, when Major Harris was recovering in the medical center, I asked her why she had led the counterattack herself when she could have sent others. The hologram showed the human officer in a hospital bed, her left shoulder covered in medical equipment working to grow her a new arm. She looked at me with tired eyes and said, "Sometimes you have to show your people you're willing to die beside them before they'll be willing to live for you." Zakathar's antennae drooped slightly. "In my species," he said, "leaders stay protected, safe. We sacrifice the many to preserve the few. Humans often do the opposite. Their leaders put themselves at risk to protect those they lead." The hologram faded, leaving only Zakthar illuminated on the stage. "This was my third lesson about human warfare," the old commander said. "Their greatest strength is not their weapons or their tactics, it is the bonds they form with each other. They fight not just for victory but for each other." The assembly hall remained silent as the cadets tried to understand this strange concept, a species that valued the individual so highly, yet whose individuals would sacrifice themselves for the group by choice, not by programming or instinct. Fleet Commander Zakthar took a moment to scan the assembly hall. The cadets sat in perfect stillness. Even those species that typically moved constantly were frozen in attention. The old commander nodded, satisfied that his lessons were being absorbed. 3 Earth years into the war, Zakthar continued, the Draxians developed a new weapon. They called them quantum phase torpedoes. The hologram display activated again. It showed a sleek missile with a pulsing core. These torpedoes could pass through our shields as if they were not there, Zakthar explained. The first time the Draxians used them, they destroyed 5 Confederation cruisers without warning. The hologram showed ships exploding, breaking apart in silent bursts of light and debris. High Command called an emergency meeting, Zakthar said. I was summoned to attend along with Admiral Peter Walsh of the human fleet. The image changed to show a tall human male with gray hair cut very short. He had deep lines on his face and intense blue eyes. He wore a dark uniform with gold markings on the shoulders. Admiral Walsh had a reputation for solving difficult problems, Zakthar explained. He had been a ship engineer before becoming an officer. The hologram showed a large room with representatives from many species seated around a circular table. Admiral Walsh sat next to Zakthar. Our best scientists presented their findings, Zakthar continued. The quantum phase torpedoes operated in a subspace field our shields could not block. Our engineers estimated it would take 7 months to develop new defenses. The old commander's antennae twitched. 7 months, he repeated. In that time, the Draxians could destroy much of our fleet. The war would be lost. A cadet with 6 eyes raised an appendage. What did you do, Commander? I did nothing, Zakthar replied. But Admiral Walsh stood up and said his team would solve the problem in 1 month, not 7. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembly hall. I thought it was human overconfidence, Zakthar admitted. I told Admiral Walsh that our most brilliant minds had calculated 7 months minimum. He looked at me and said, with respect, Commander, your brilliant minds never had to fix a car with duct tape and a prayer during a Minnesota winter. The cadets looked confused. Zakthar made a clicking sound that translated as a chuckle. Did not understand the reference either, he said. I learned later that Minnesota is a cold region on Earth, a car is a ground transport vehicle, and duct tape is a simple adhesive material humans use to repair almost anything. The hologram changed to show a large space dock. Human engineers worked alongside aliens, modifying Confederation ships. Admiral Walsh brought in human engineers from their civilian sectors, Zakthar explained. People who had never worked on starships before. People who built bridges or designed toys or repaired ancient vehicles. The cadets looked even more confused now. I questioned this decision, Zakthar continued. I asked why he would bring in people with no experience in space technology. He told me, sometimes you need people who don't know what's impossible. The hologram zoomed in to show humans and aliens working on a small device. It looked simple, a sphere with antenna-like projections. The human engineers did not try to modify our shields, Zakthar said. Instead, they created what they called garbage collectors, small automated drones that would detect the subspace signature of the torpedoes and intercept them before they reached our ships. The image showed the small devices being attached to the hull of a Confederation cruiser. Our scientists said it would not work, Zakthar said. The energy requirements were too high, the detection systems were too simple, the interceptors were too slow. The old commander's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. The humans ignored them, he said simply. They kept working, making adjustments, trying new ideas. When one approach failed, they tried another. The hologram changed to show a test. A torpedo moved toward a stationary shield. A small drone intercepted it, causing both to explode safely away from the target. 26 Earth days after Admiral Walsh made his promise, Zakthar said, we had a working defense against the quantum phase torpedoes. The cadets made sounds of amazement. The solution was not elegant, Zakthar admitted. It did not follow established scientific principles. It was, as the humans say, messy, but it worked. The hologram showed the Battle of Tau Ceti, where a Confederation fleet engaged Draxian forces. The Draxians launched their special torpedoes, only to see them destroyed by the small drones before they reached their targets. The Draxians were unprepared for our response, Zikthar said. They had committed their forces based on the belief that their new weapon would give them victory. When that weapon failed, they had no fallback plan. The image showed the Draxian fleet retreating, pursued by Confederation ships. After the battle, Zakathar continued, I asked Admiral Walsh how his team had solved in 1 month a problem our scientists said would take 7. He smiled and said, Humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. The old commander looked out at the sea of cadets. What he meant, Zikthar explained, was that humans become most creative when facing destruction. When there is no choice but to find a solution or die, they find solutions. A cadet with crystal-like skin spoke up. But Commander, is that not true of all intelligent species? Do we not all strive harder when survival is at stake? Yes and no, Zikthar replied. Most species become more conservative when threatened. They fall back on proven methods, they take fewer risks. Humans do the opposite. They innovate more, they take greater risks. They try ideas that have never been tested before. The hologram changed to show Admiral Walsh working alongside his engineering team. They looked tired but determined, testing different designs for the defensive drones. The Admiral told me later that throughout human history, their greatest advances often came during their most desperate times, Zikthar said. Their inventiveness is triggered by need, not comfort. The old commander's voice grew thoughtful. This was my 4th lesson about human warfare, he said. When faced with an impossible problem, humans do not accept that it is impossible. They find new ways to look at it. They combine ideas that should not go together. They break rules that we consider unchangeable. The hologram faded, leaving only Zikthar in the spotlight again. After the Battle of Tau Ceti, the old commander continued, the war changed. The Draxians lost their advantage. The Confederation began to push them back. Victory seemed possible for the first time. Zikthar's antennae moved slowly, a sign of deep thought. But the greatest lesson about human warfare, he said, was still to come. The hardest lesson for many of us to understand. The assembly hall remained silent. The cadets waited, eager to hear what final revelation the old commander would share about the strange and frightening humans who had become their allies. Fleet Commander Zakathar stood silent for a moment. The assembly hall was so quiet that many cadets found themselves holding their breath. The old commander seemed to be gathering his thoughts, deciding how best to explain his final lesson about human warfare. The war with the Draxians lasted 6 Earth years, Zikthar finally continued. Millions died on both sides, planets were scarred, ships were destroyed, and in the end, the tide turned in our favor. The hologram activated once more. It showed a massive space battle around a large planet with 3 moons. This was the Battle of Sirius Prime, Zikthar said. The last major conflict of the war. The combined forces of the Confederation, including many human ships, faced the remaining Draxian fleet. The image showed hundreds of ships firing at each other. Explosions lit up the darkness of space. By this time, the old commander explained, I commanded the dreadnought Voice of Authority, the flagship of our fleet. We had the Draxians outnumbered. Victory was certain. The hologram zoomed in on a human science vessel near the edge of the battle. It was not a warship, but a research craft. 3 days before the battle, Zikthar said, a human scientist named Nicole Winters made a discovery. She found a fundamental flaw in Draxian FTL technology. They're faster-than-light engines. The cadets leaned forward. This was new information to most of them. Dr. Winters determined that a specific energy pulse, sent at the right frequency, would cause all Draxian drives within a certain range to shut down, Zikathar explained. Their ships would be helpless, unable to flee, unable to fight effectively. The key hologram showed Dr. Winters, a human female with dark skin and curly black hair. She wore simple clothes with a patch that showed her science division. Dr. Winters brought her findings to Captain Daniel Ward of the cruiser Horizon, Zakathar continued. They developed a weapon based on her discovery. a weapon that could have destroyed the entire Draxian fleet with a single pulse. The image showed Captain Ward, a tall human with brown hair and a serious expression, looking at technical plans with Dr. Winters. High Command ordered them to use the weapon, Zekthar said, to end the war with one final blow that would leave no Draxian ship functioning. The old commander's voice grew softer. And then Captain Ward did something that shocked many of us, he said. He refused the order. Sounds of surprise and confusion filled the assembly hall. A cadet with a ridge of spines along its back stood up. Commander? The cadet asked. Are you saying this human committed treason? By some definitions, yes, Zekthar replied. Captain Ward argued that using the weapon would not just disable the Draxian ships. It would strand them in space with failing life support systems. Most would die slowly. He called it unnecessary cruelty. The hologram showed Captain Ward speaking forcefully to a group of Confederation officers, including Zekthar. Instead, the old commander continued, Captain Ward proposed using the Discovery differently. He suggested sending a message to the Draxian command ship, demonstrating the weapon on a single unmanned vessel, and offering terms of surrender. The cadets looked at each other in confusion. A young member of a gaseous species pulsed with agitation. But Commander, the cadet asked, the Draxians had committed atrocities. They started the war. Why show them mercy? Zekthar's antennae dipped, low, a sign of deep thought. That, he said, was exactly what I asked Captain Ward. His answer was perhaps the most important lesson about human warfare I ever learned. The hologram showed Captain Ward standing face-to-face with Zekthar. The human looked tired but determined. He told me, if we use this weapon to kill helpless enemies, we become no better than them. Victory isn't worth losing who we are. The old commander's exoskeleton clicked as he shifted position. I did not understand, Zekthar admitted. In war, you use every advantage. You destroy your enemy completely when you can. That is efficiency. That is logic. The hologram changed to show the Draxian command ship receiving a message from the Confederation fleet. But High Command was swayed by Captain Ward's argument. Zekthar continued. They authorized his plan. We demonstrated the weapon on an unmanned Draxian scout ship. Then we opened communications. The image showed Draxian officers watching as one of their ships suddenly lost power and drifted helplessly in space. The Draxians understood their position immediately, Zekthar said. They knew we could disable their entire fleet. They agreed to negotiations. The hologram showed representatives from both sides meeting on a neutral space station. Humans sat alongside other Confederation species across from the Draxians. The peace treaty was signed there, Zekthar said. The war ended not with the destruction of our enemy but with their surrender. Their empire was reduced, reparations were set, but their civilization survived. The old commander's voice grew thoughtful. After the treaty signing, he continued, I spoke with Captain Ward again. I told him I still did not understand why he had argued for mercy when complete victory was possible. The hologram showed the two officers standing by a large viewport looking out at the stars. He looked at me and said, because true victory isn't about defeating an enemy, Commander. It's about making sure you don't have to fight them again. Zekathar's 4 eyes blinked slowly. He explained that throughout human history, wars that ended with humiliation and destruction often led to new wars years later. The old commander said, but conflicts that ended with fair terms often led to lasting peace. The hologram changed to show scenes from after the war, former enemies working together, Draxian ships alongside Confederation vessels on joint missions. 20 years have passed since the war ended, Zekthar said. The Draxians are now members of the Confederation. Former enemies have become allies. Captain Ward's wisdom has been proven correct. The hologram faded for the final time, leaving only the old commander, illuminated on the stage. This was my final and most important lesson about human warfare, Zekthar said. Humans fight with surprising fierceness, with unpredictable tactics, with deep personal courage. But their greatest strength is knowing when not to fight, knowing when mercy serves better than destruction. The commander straightened to his full height. You asked me to share tales of human warfare, he said to the silent cadets. I have told you what 50 years of fighting alongside them has taught me. They are not especially strong or fast. Their ships are not the most advanced. What makes them unique is their contradictions. Zikathar's voice grew stronger, filling the assembly hall. They are individualists who sacrifice for each other. They are rule makers who excel at rule breaking. They find paths where we see only obstacles. And most importantly, they understand that sometimes the strongest warriors are those who choose not to use their strength. The old commander looked out at the young cadets who would form the next generation of the Confederation's defense forces. Remember this above all, Zakathar concluded. In humans we have gained not just skilled warriors, but a species that fights not because it desires conflict, but because it dreams so fiercely of peace. As Fleet Commander Zakathar finished his address, the assembly hall erupted with the sounds of appreciation from hundreds of alien cadets. They had come expecting tales of battle and glory. They left with a deeper understanding of the strange, contradictory, and ultimately hopeful species called humans.